Kia ora, g'day. Welcome back once again. Here with part 3, I think, of my reaction to Mr. Chris VanSant, former Delta Force operator on the Sean Ryan Show. So let's jump back in.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference for me between the regiment and when I went out to the regular army was in the regular army, there'd be whole days where you did nothing. Like dudes would just be sitting in their barracks rooms, like doing correspondence courses or hiding out, basically. And it was kind of accepted. Looking back years later, I know that like budgets and things have a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
Like conventional units just don't get millions and millions of dollars to buy ammunition and rounds to be out on the range and training. Whereas, people that fall under the special operations bubble did. So it subsequently increases proficiency and all those things. But yeah, there were a lot of time where you're just doing nothing. And that was a shock.
What did you deploy with the regiment?
No, not to combat.
Okay.
Because it was peacetime. I did a deployment per se with them. We went to Germany. We jumped in and did a 40-mile movement to an objective. And
a 40-mile movement?
A 40-mile movement through Germany.
Sounds like is it a training exercise? I don't know. He says it was peacetime, so a deployment, maybe they call their training exercises even in another country. Maybe they classify those as deployments. I don't know.
And I want to say...
On foot?
I want to say Stanley McChrystal, General McChrystal was in the regiment. He might have been 3rd Ranger Battalion commander at the time. And I think Colonel Leszczynski maybe was the 75th. But regardless, they wanted to prove that the regiment had the capability to jump in behind enemy lines and move an excessive distance like that and then still have effects on target. So we did. We did a 40-mile infill. Over a couple of days, and I was a mortar guy, so I had like a base plate, and I had a 120-pound rucksack and skinny little 135-pound kit or whatever I was back then. But it was awesome. Like it sucked, but it was neat to do something like that and go. We just walked 40 miles and then hit a target.
How long did that take?
And that's the part that I like. Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear how long that took. 40 miles. I have no idea. 70, 80 kilometers, something like that, maybe. I don't know. I should look it up now, but I'm not. But it just reminds me of in battalion, like the walkouts. It was pretty standard to do a walkout after the end of an exercise. And in this case, so not only being fit to fight takes on a whole different meaning, inserting into somewhere, patrolling, walking to target, then conducting a deliberate action or an immediate action, depending on the task or what happens, the scenario that plays out as part of the training exercise, and then still being fit enough, strong enough, and able to walk off target to get back to an exfil point or whatever it might be. It's I like how he says it's awesome. It probably doesn't sound that awesome when you're getting the warning order, and then when you're having to do it. But I think once you're in it, I found anyway for me, once I was in it, doing things like that, not a 40-miler, but doing things like from our core training, even basic training, but again, never anything that long. And then when it became pretty standard in the battalion that you're always going to do sort of a 15 to 20 kilometer plus walk out of an exercise at the end of completion after you've been out on task for a couple of weeks or so, you definitely got used to it. And it helped me understand and appreciate the work that I was signing up for to look to try to serve in. So yeah, anyway, let's get back to this and see how long it took them if he remembers.
I think it took us like 2.5 days. Yeah, maybe 3. So it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And they would have had heavy, like you said, he was a mortarman, so the ammunition, the base plates, everything else, and you got the heavy weapons crew. Man, you're carrying a lot of gear, and that's just your ammunition and your core pieces of equipment, not including, your sleeping kit, your change of clothes, your cold weather gear in case it's bad, your wet weather gear. That's not including any specialist equipment or batteries that you need. That's not including your frontline ammo or 2 frontline ammunitions. It's a lot of kit. when you think about it. So 2 days, 3 days. Yep. I assume they wouldn't have just been bowling down roads and streets. It would have been cross country and that as well. So the terrain would have played a part in that too.
But that was really neat. And then we did some stuff with the Germans. We did some cross training. Got our German shoots a sneer marksmanship badge. Did a foreign wing jump and some other things. And so that was literally like my first year in the Army. So like I thought all that was just normal. Like,
yeah.
That's cool. It does. Sorry to pause the button again, but it does sound like it was a training exercise. And there's some stuff coming up for the NZDF. I think they got trips to Korea or something. We didn't have any trips to Korea during my time. It was just backwards and forwards to Australia, and there may have been and trips over to Fiji. So it's cool to hear some of the different places that the NZDF anyway are getting to go to. And by the sounds of things, Australia have always had a fair few opportunities in and around the Indonesian area and that sort of stuff with regards to what they're doing, and coming backwards and forwards to NZ as well. So they'll probably be heading over to other places too, by the sounds of things, the way the world is going at the moment.
That was going on all over the place, and it definitely was not.
So how did you wind up in the conventional Army?
I got a DUI.
That was it.
That was it. Yeah, I got a DUI, and they sent me to 3rd Infantry Division. And yeah, so next thing you know, I'm a mechanized infantryman instead of jumping out of planes and riding around in a tank.
Holy shit. How did that feel when you got the word, hey, you're done here, it's over?
Pretty awful. When it happened, my section started, my mortar section started at the time. So the E6 that was in charge of the mortar section, he got a DUI the same night. And so they kind of were making an example out of us, but it didn't happen right away. Like that stuff happened and we were, I guess, punished for lack of a better term. We both got a general letter of reprimand that stays with you for your whole career, which was terrifying to me as a young private. But we didn't leave. We actually did the Germany thing after we got in trouble because they wanted like a full workforce. They wanted all the bodies to go do this exercise in Germany and spend this time over there. So I actually had good things happen in the regiment to where there was a point where I was like, maybe I'm not leaving. Maybe they just forgot about it. But no, the time came and I got orders when we got home from Germany and I left.
Damn.
But yeah, Third ID was a different experience. There's some really good leaders there, some funny leaders, and then some real pieces of shit that were in the organization. And I think what that taught me was in every organization in the military, and it's probably true in the Navy too, there's turds in every punch bowl. It's just depending on what level you're at, there's less. Like, you know, there's good and bad in every organization. It's just, it's the percentages. And so I had some great folks, some great leadership, some people that changed my career. And a battalion commander in 3rd Infantry Division that was probably the difference between me getting out of the Army after 4 years, feeling defeated, like I got in trouble and I wouldn't be able to overcome it, to me re-enlisting and staying in the Army and continuing what ended up being a 20-year career.
Damn. What kind of stuff were you doing at 3rd ID other than sitting in the barracks?
Again, so there's going to be a recurring theme here.
All right.
Like, I think throughout the course of my life, with all the good and all the bad that's happened to me, I've just had good timing. Like, I've been certain places at certain times where I was just fortunate to get to experience whatever it was. And so 3rd ID, at first I was like, this is awful. Like, I'm down at the motor pool changing oil and breaking track on a tank on Mondays. Like, that's my Monday, every Monday. But what ended up happening was, so post First Gulf War, remember we did we controlled all the airspace over Iraq and we patrolled the airspace. Well, somewhere in that phase was called Operation Desert Thunder, which is Saddam was being goofy again. So we shut down the airspace again, and then we launched all of these like exercises in the desert of Kuwait to sort of a show of force and remind him, like, we'll come beat you down again if you act a fool. So we ended up deploying, like, an entire mechanized brigade ended up deploying. I think they called it like Operation Intrinsic Action on our side, but it was the overarching thing was called Operation Desert Thunder. We got an expeditionary medal for that. Even though it was like peacetime and we weren't at war with anybody, we forward deployed to Kuwait, right on the border of Iraq. But what it turned into was 6 months of living in the desert, building, I think they called them cabooses or something, but it was basically a dirt bermed giant compound. We erected all the tents, we filled all the sandbags, basically cradle to grave, from nothing but flat desert to an entire FOB, for lack of a better term, forward operating base, and then conducted maneuvers out of there. And what we had was, so all of the war stock from the first Gulf War was still in Kuwait. So we had ammunition and artillery rounds and mortar rounds for days. So for this 6-month period, we did live fire stuff like literally like 4 and 5 times a week. I shot more rounds in that 6 months than probably most guys that spent an entire career in an infantry mortar unit ever shot. And it was because it was this big demonstration of force. So we got really good at what we did. So even with the studs and the duds in the platoon that I was in, we turned into a really effective, cohesive unit because we had nothing to do but train. We were sitting in the desert, forward deployed.
That's awesome. It just, in my head, it paints a picture of how effective your units, your forces can be when they're resourced, when they have the resources, and when you've got good leaders that are going to use that time, not just sit out in the desert and mince around and do nothing, whinge and moan and complain about things and just collect the paycheck, but actually be proactive and put the gear to use, test it, do the shooting, do all the training and the things that you may potentially be called upon to have to do, and how effective and cohesive, like you said, you can become. That's in a lot of cases, it's just typically for conventional type stuff. I don't know what it's like these days. I would imagine it's still pretty much the same. One of the limiting factors is the resources for ammunitions and that sort of thing, and maybe to a degree training grounds, training areas to go and apply that that type of training that you want or that you need to do.
Like we were prepping to go to war tomorrow.
Damn.
And it turned out for me, like leadership wise, it turned out to be a great experience. Understanding what being deployed felt like and being away from your family, and as a young guy, filling sandbags and burning shit, all the uncomfortable stuff that goes with it. That did suck at the time, but when you look back on years later, you're like, man, I'm lucky that happened. Like, very few people get an opportunity like that.
Yeah.
So it turned out to be really good. And then came back from that. I'm sorry.
Did a lot of the guys look up to you because you came from the regiment?
Yeah, I think that made it easier. I think the leadership, the NCOs, saw early that I had been exposed to good leaders, and that I was hungry and motivated more so than a lot of the guys that they were used to. So they sort of took to me. The younger guys did have more respect for you because, as far as they were concerned, you were an Army Ranger. It didn't matter that you left. You had done that and they hadn't, so they definitely looked up to you. But I sort of aggressively pursued leadership roles when I was there, once I figured out I could, like that I could be the PT stud and push other guys to excel in physical fitness, and that I could lead and make guys go train and do the right thing. Like, I saw that leadership liked that. I saw that younger guys responded to it. And I saw an opportunity to get myself back on track, and I pursued it.
I love that he mentions that the younger guys like that. Maybe not all of them, but what I like in terms of some of our children serving in the military at the moment, the ones that are in and the unit that they're a part of in terms of an infantry unit, our boys have a lot of respect for their leaders that are fit, that are capable, that are driven, that are looking for work for their sections and or for their platoon to do. Work, like meaningful work to do with their job, not that our boys have come back and complained about anything, but they typically come back and really enjoy the physical aspects, the PT. They really like and they speak highly about some of their leaders who are very, very fit, I can tell that our boys admire them, look up to them, because they set a good example with their presence, how they communicate, and that those particular leaders that our boys have been exposed to in the Army right now are following through and doing the things that they're asking their subordinates to do. So hearing him speak about the opportunity that he had to show that extra drive and and no doubt probably would have been encouraging some of the other guys there within his division that he was a part of. No doubt they would have, there would have been a number that would have been drawn to that. You're always going to get some of the slugs that don't really care, or the duds that don't really care about that stuff. They may just be there for a paycheck or other reasons, or just to coast or whatever. But by and large, there's a number of people that are there because, they want to do the job as well as they can, and they want to do it to a high level.
That's awesome. I wasn't expecting you to say that the leadership liked you, because a lot of guys that come from a unit like that go to conventional side, and then there's some insecurities that come out in the leadership because you came from a soft unit.
Well, funny story. I've told this one other time. So when I first got there, my platoon sergeant, if he ever hears one of these things, I hope to God the man finds me on social media and reaches out to me, because I love him to death to this day, and I think really highly of him. But he was a master sergeant, so in a mortar platoon, it was real rank heavy. You had an E8 platoon sergeant, which was rare. You had 2 E7 section sergeants, and then a bunch of E6s and E5s, et cetera, et cetera. And he was our platoon sergeant. And so I show up day one, sign into the unit in processing or whatever, and I finally get to my platoon. And he brings me into his platoon office, and he's sitting at the desk, and he's this giant man, Master Sergeant Donald P. Blackman, huge NFL lineman size dude, on the overweight side, NFL lineman size dude, right? And I say that lovingly, but he's like, have a seat, and he's talking to me, and he said some cool things in the beginning. He's like, hey, I want you to I don't want you to beat yourself up. Like, you're a 19-year-old kid, you made a mistake. You got spanked for it. Learn your lesson, grow from it, and move on. He's like, I'm not going to carry that into this. I'm not going to hold it over your head. No one's going to look down on you, and I'm not going to let them look down on you. Like, he said some really positive things.
That is awesome to hear that this Master Sergeant, I think he said, took the time to have this conversation with him. I want to hear what else he says.
And then he paused, and he said, I want to ask you a few questions. And I said, okay. And he said, Ranger Battalion. I was never in the Ranger Battalion. He's like, but, I've seen them. I know what they've done in the past and learned a little about them. And I said, yes, Sergeant. And he said, there's not a lot of black fellas in the Ranger Regiment. And he was a black guy. And I said, no, Sergeant, there's not. And I'm scared, right? Like, before we even started, even though he had said all these positive things, like he buttered me up to ask me something difficult. So I'm a little nervous, and he said, not a lot of black fellas in the regiment, huh? And I said, no, Sergeant.
That's a random, not a lot of black fellas in there. But, I suppose if that's the way it was, it's a cool observation from this Master Sergeant.
There's not. He said, how many black guys do you think are in the Ranger Regiment? How many black guys are in 3rd Ranger Battalion? I said, 4. Just like that. And he, jumped in his seat, and he went, there's only 4? And me, I go, well, when you're in the dining facility, Sergeant, it's not that hard. There's just not that many guys. I said, I think there's 4. And he goes, huh. And he leans forward in his chair, and he leans over the desk to close the distance, and he says, why do you think that is? And I thought, in probably a split second, my brain went, shit. If I say whatever, he's gonna know that I'm lying to him. And I've now set the conditions for our relationship for the rest of my time here. If I tell him what I really think, he might punch me in the face, or he might respect what I have to say. And so I rolled the dice, and I said, I'm just going to tell him the truth, or at least what I really think to be the truth. Remember, I was an ocean lifeguard. And I said, honestly, Sergeant, I think it's because black guys have trouble passing the swim test. And he paused, and then he busted out laughing, and he said, you're goddamn right, I can't swim a lick.
Holy shit.
And we had a laugh, and he...
Wow, that's a hard case. It's it makes me think of something completely different, but in terms of the swimming aspect and Polynesians. So the amount of my Polynesian friends that are not very good swimmers, and I'm not saying all of them, but by and large, a vast majority of my Polynesian friends that, are not very good swimmers at all. They'll go and dive for seafood, but they're not good swimmers in a pool in terms of I suppose what might be considered the traditional swimming sense freestyle, breaststroke, backstroke, etc., butterfly. But a lot of my Polynesian friends, man, they can't even swim freestyle. They default to dog paddle. so hearing him say this about why is there not a lot of black guys and why do you think that is? I think they struggle with the swim test again. Probably it must be a thing. I think when I was watching and reacting to the Buds class of 234, I don't think I saw too many black people, African American people. I don't know what the term is that they like to use these days. But I don't recall seeing that many dark skin colored individuals on the class of 234. Maybe it's changed now. Maybe there's a whole bunch that come through, but it's hard case. 4 guys in his whole infantry division or battalion, whatever they called it, or whatever he was a part of there. And then not many guys getting through. Why do you think that is? Good on him, man, telling the truth. And hard case that they've had a laugh about it.
Said right then and there, he said, "You're all right, VanSant." He's like, "I like you, and I think you're going to do just fine." And so fast forward a while later in the platoon, and we, one night in Kuwait, like we had a long conversation about it. He's like, "Yeah, man." He's like, "They come from different places." He's like, "But a lot of black guys that end up in the service, they grew up in the inner city or they grew up someplace where they didn't have pools, they didn't have access, they didn't swim."
Yeah, that's a good point.
You can call it a stereotype. Nowadays it's like people will come after you if you said something like that. There was nothing racist or anything in any of that. It was matter of fact, and it was true to the regiment and in a lot of units. And I think they came up with ways to combat that. Like, yeah, you know what? We do have some people that grow up and don't swim, so let's afford them an opportunity to learn and to practice so they can be successful in some of those courses and they're not limited by their background or experience prior service.
I was one of those people that struggled with swimming, and we had I remember some of the first swimming lessons I remember being a part of. I could swim freestyle, but not for very long and not for any like decent period of time. I think I've spoken about that when I'd get up early in the morning when I started preparing for selection more with a more focused approach, and I knew swimming was a massive weakness of mine, so I needed to work on it. But I remember one of the PTIs in Linton, Jason Keno. I think he was a Corporal Keno or Sergeant Keno, one or the other. He might have been corporal at the time. But I remember him taking us as part of we had a swim PT session. I actually enjoyed the swimming PT sessions, swimming laps in between, doing exercises once you got out to the other side, then jumping back and doing that constantly. That really helped. But he also took the time to take us through some swimming instruction, standing up on the side and then demonstrating the movement of what we needed to do with our hands, getting us to practice it, and then having those little segments of training, swimming technique, and then getting in the pool and then really working on trying to practice it and apply it. Man, I felt myself moving much more smoothly in the water. I definitely got tired quicker because I needed to build up, I suppose, the endurance and the muscle strength to be able to continue with that, and the aerobic capacity to be able to maintain that as well, the technique that is, before I started defaulting and just doing some hideous bloody freestyle stroke. But hearing him speak about let's create an opportunity for some soldiers that may not have been in that environment, so they have an opportunity. Yeah, that's cool. And so when he said that, I just instantly thought of Jason Keno. If he ever sees this, shout out to you, brother. Thank you very much for your time and the energy that he brought too. He always brought good energy to our PT sessions, always pushed us along, encouraging us as PTIs do with yelling. But he was a good man. Anyway. It was a funny moment that led to a much deeper relationship and a more honest relationship between the two of us. And he was a really good leader. Like, he was a smart guy. He pushed us when we were in the desert. He genuinely cared about the Army, and he cared about me, and I knew that. And same with, my battalion commander that basically talked me into staying in the service. Those guys took a personal interest in me as a human being, and it stuck with me forever. Like, as a leader, and then even now, like, you can have an impact on a single individual's life, sometimes just with the words that you use.
Yeah. And
showing them that you care, or taking the time to listen to their story or to share yours, can make a difference in their life for, fucking 10, 20 years to come. And those are just a couple examples of people that had an impact on me that early after a mistake that changed the course of what I did.
That's awesome. How long did you wind up spending at the Third ID?
About 2.5 years, probably. I was coming up on, you can re-enlist.
Third ID. It must be, is it infantry division? Must be, eh? Third ID. Third Infantry Division? I hope so.
A year out, 12 months out from when your time to get out of the service date was. And like I said, I had that conversation with the battalion commander at the time. I was really stressed about my letter of reprimand, my punishment hurting me and like slowing me down. And he was just very reassuring. Colonel Lee was his name. That's another one that I wish would track me down if he ever heard something that I said on social media, because I'd love to hear how he's doing and tell him, like, sir, you changed my life. But
I'm going to pause this there. It's cool to hear him acknowledging some of the leaders and the people that he's had in his life, especially in his early days military career. 19 years of age, going through Ranger School, then going to 3rd Infantry Division. I hope that's the right acronym, or Third ID. I'll just say that in case it stands for something else. But yeah, I sincerely hope that those people whose names he's mentioned have heard and seen him and have heard him acknowledge them, and that they, feel a sense of pride in terms of how they treated him, how they respected him. I particularly like how I think it was the Master Sergeant that spoke about he's messed up, he's sent there, but they're not going to keep a hold of that. They're not going to, hold that over him and make him have to carry that from where he's come from. He's been removed from Ranger School, Ranger Battalion, Ranger Regiment for the DUI that he had. He's now in 3rd ID, and he's, he'll be feeling bad enough. And so it's cool that those leaders at that time saw that, or probably understood that, and chose to go about it in the way that they did, because if they wanted to, they could have probably just made that, constantly brought it up, given him all the crap jobs, really made him feel even worse, to the point where they may have driven him out. And so just to hear him acknowledging those leaders, the words that they shared, the personal interest that I think I heard him say that they took in him and helping him, that's got to, not only does that make him feel good and he remembers it, I hope that makes them feel good too, and that they do hear and see the positive impact that they've had on him through their words. It's a powerful thing. Anyway, I like that. I'm going to leave this here, as I mentioned, but thank you very much for your time and support, as always, listening to me jabber on in regards to my interjections of the reactions to these incredible interviews that Sean Ryan does on his show. And that being said, man, I just want to, on the back end of the DUI and him being shifted to another unit for that, or his punishment, for want of a better term, it's a testament to the fact that regardless, again, the message being the same, of any challenges, trials, struggles, difficulties, dark times that you and that we may be going through, that there's always a way to come out of it on the other side. That if we continue to just keep turning up, that if we stay in the fight, that if we put one foot in front of the other, that if we take one day at a time, that if we're kinder to ourselves, and as and when applicable, maybe if we are kinder to others in the process, man, the sun will shine again. There are better days ahead. And there is a light at the end of that tunnel. I know that things can do and will get better if we want them to. So, and hearing Chris VanSant's story is a testament to that. So, as always, go always a little further. Remember, who dares wins and who cares wins. And until the next video, there's a big mana wave coming from me to you, filled with my aroha, respect, appreciation, and gratitude for you all.